Right, shalom, shalom. All praises to Yahweh Bashem Shai. Double honor to the elders and the apostles of great millstones and willing teach brothers taught of his truth. This is a quick in transit message, man. As as we see this week, there's been a lot of scoffers. People are trying to show up and debate. And one core question that always gets brought up is, can the Gentiles be saved? And the simple answer to that question is no. They cannot be saved. These other heathen nations cannot be saved. First and foremost, what is salvation? Let's go ahead and get that. Let's get salvation on the etymology online. Because see, the salvation that we're talking about is not the salvation that the Christian church talks about. The salvation that we're talking about is the salvation from total nuclear destruction that's coming to America, which these Christians don't even believe. So how can you ask us if you can be saved from something that you yourself don't even believe in? Make that make sense. So let's get the word salvation, and we're going to get here on the second part of the screen. It says the sense of protection or preservation from destruction, danger, and calamity. And that's exactly what's coming. See, we understand that we need salvation based upon the scriptures. See, one of those definitions was calamity. All right, and that's something that the Christian church doesn't teach you about, and it's something that we bring out. This is Amos 5:18. Woe unto you that desire the day of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. To what end is it for you? The day of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai is darkness and not light. See, so the scriptures tell you about a dark day coming, but the Christian church tells you about, naked baby angels coming. So how can you be saved from something that you don't even comprehend and you refuse to believe? So let's go back. I had Daniel 7, or it's like a Daniel 2 pulled up. Now, why do I have Daniel 2 pulled up? Because when Daniel 2 and Daniel 7 are chapters that both talk about the different captivities that that Israel would have to go through. These were different kingdoms that would reign over the earth, okay? And those kingdoms, those captivities, okay, are the Assyrian Babylonian captivity, the Medo-Persian captivity, the Greek captivity, the ancient Roman captivity, and then the revived Roman Empire, which is mentioned in Revelation 13, which is talked about in Revelation, the 20th chapter, about the deadly wound that was healed, about the devil being let loose for 1,000 years, all right? So the reason that I want to bring this up is because for those people that are, that may come across the truth, all right? And I'm going to say it like that, the truth, because this is our message, but first and foremost, it's the truth. It's what's in the scripture. So for people that may come across the truth for the first time, it may seem really out of this world. And you know what? Rightfully, it should be, because the truth is not of this world, all right? Be ye separate, be ye holy, as he is holy. Ain't that what the scriptures say? So the scriptures in themselves, they are out of this world. But y'all know what I'm trying to say is that when people would first hear the truth, it's like, what? I've never heard about that. What do you mean other nations are going into captivity and so-called blacks, natives, and Hispanics are going to be slaves? It's such a profound 180 from what was being espoused, because that's how we were raised, right? Growing up in the Christian church, you were taught that everybody goes to heaven. Growing up now in America, you are taught that everybody is the same. We all bleed red. We're all God's children. That's what you hear. But yet, what do you see? You see different tiers of justice. You know, take a look at those Jeffrey files. You take a look at young so-called white men getting probation for rape, and then young so-called black men getting life for, a couple pounds of drugs. You see a two-tiered system, right? Take a look at the average income of a so-called white, and then take a look at the average income of a so-called black. Again, it's two tiers. So we're told one thing, but we live out a completely different thing. Okay, and that's how it's been in these different captivities. See, the book of Daniel goes through the different captivities and what happens throughout those different captivities. You have other nations above the so-called blacks, natives, and Hispanics. Correct? Absolutely. The Assyrians took the northern kingdom into captivity. The Babylonians took the southern kingdom into captivity. All right. The Medo-Persians allowed us to rebuild our temple, but really it wasn't even them. It was it was through Yahweh Bahashim, Yahweh Shai. All right. The Greek captivity brought in the falling away, right? It brought in the Hellenization, okay, which, for those that are new, that goes into the so-called blacks, natives, and Hispanics, who are the true Hebrew Israelites, being forced to adopt the ways of the Greeks. All right, and why were they forced? Because if they did not do it, they would be beheaded, they would be burned, their babies would be slaughtered, and then their babies would be wrapped around the neck of the mom by their umbilical cord. And then you had the ancient Roman Empire, where you had the persecution of the Southern Kingdom of Israelites. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is this, man, is that throughout these different captivities, it shows the Hebrew Israelites being at the bottom and other nations being at the top. All right, and everybody understands that. Nobody will negate that. Now we are here to tell you what the scriptures say. Okay, this is Daniel 2 and 44 says, and in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom. Okay, so Daniel just named off those kingdoms which I mentioned. And we can all agree that during those kingdoms, the Hebrew Israelites were at the bottom and other nations were at the top. The Hebrew Israelites had to pay taxes. The Hebrew Israelites couldn't observe the laws and the commandments, right? Because they had to go to work, they had to be slaves, they were Hellenized, they were taken to other lands so that they couldn't fulfill the Passover. Okay, so in again in the previous kingdoms, we were brought down, but the scriptures say that there's a new kingdom coming. All right, it says the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. So when Yahweh Shai comes back, all right, uh, he's going to do away with the other kingdoms. Just what happened when the Greek Empire was at its full force? The other kingdoms, the Medo-Persians, were taken out, and that's what's about to happen. All right, because then the Medo-Persians, they then became subject to the Greeks, and that we're only telling you that the same thing is going to happen, but there's going to be a translation of power. It says, matter of fact, let me see here. Matter of fact, let's go from here to Isaiah 14 because these are very simple scriptures, which you have to ask yourself. If the Christian church is telling you that everybody can be saved, and then GMS is bringing out that the heathens can be saved, the only thing that you should do is go into the scriptures and find out what do the scriptures say. This is what the scriptures say. Isaiah 14. For Yahweh Bahashim Yahushai will have mercy on Jacob and will yet choose Israel. That goes into the translation of power, as we were talking about in Daniel 2. The choosing of Israel, okay, shows you that the Most High has not done away with his people. All right? The Most High has not cast away his people. It says he will yet choose Israel and set them in their own land, and the strangers shall be joined with them, and those strangers are Israelite foreigners, all right, that that may look like so-called whites, may look like so-called East Indians. We are strangers, right? We're not in the land. We were, going after the ways of the heathen, but the strangers, the Israelites, bloodline Israelites, yes, bloodline Israelites. This is a bloodline thing, okay? Bloodline Israelites shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob. Now, here's the point, and the people shall take them and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. Now, what is the land of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai? Well, that goes into the Holy Land, but that's that's also talking about in the days of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai's kingdom on earth. See, all these other nations, they had their kingdom, they had their rulership. Hebrew Israelites don't. There is no Israelite army. There is no Hebrew Israelite government, per se that rules and governs its people. No, we don't have that. The scriptures call us a worm. We're defenseless. Okay, it says in the land of Yahweh, and shall possess them in the land of Yahweh Shemashah for servants and handmaids, and they shall take them captives, whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. See, so for those that may be coming into this truth, that may be coming, across the truth for the first time. At first, when you heard me speaking about how these other nations are going to be slaves to the Hebrew Israelites, it's so out of this world, but it's right here in the scriptures. They shall take them captives, whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. Again, the same people that we were under and that we still are under to this day, they are going to be our captives. So whenever you hear a Hebrew Israelite saying that these other nations are going into captivity, that's that's in the scriptures. Now, somebody might come across it, and this isn't a deep lesson. It doesn't have to be a deep lesson. This is fundamental, though. All right, it's fundamental. All right, there is no salvation for these other nations. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if there's a raffle going on at your job for who gets let's say you're at your workplace and they've got a raffle going, who gets $1,000 and then gets to go watch a Atlanta Falcons game. I'm not into sports, but some shit like that. And then they do the raffle, and then lo and behold, the CEO wins the prize. You will be like, well, hold on a minute, what's going on? Why is the CEO of the company winning the prize that everybody else deserves? Well, that's exactly Christianity in a nutshell. Christianity in a nutshell, because so-called whites right now, this is the final captivity, all right? This is the revived Roman Empire, but so-called whites are telling you that they also get to win the raffle ticket while being CEOs, while being, in charge of the entire world, and they get to go to that Falcons game and they get $1,000 bonus. They don't need that. See, when you talk about kingdomship talks about a ruling over. All right, every these four captivities mentioned, they were ruling over nations. Okay, so how could Esau go from one kingdom to another kingdom? Are they going to ascend above Yahushua? It doesn't make sense, man. We're here to tell you that the kingdom is going to be translated. All right, and to continue to build upon this point, this is Revelation 13:10. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. Now, this is New Testament for you New Testament people. Very plain and simple. He that kills with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. Now, this is very simple. Who has killed and taken into captivity the so-called blacks, natives, and Hispanics? Well, as of more recently, it's been the Edomites, but all nations have had a role in this. Okay, let's see. Let's get Psalms 83. Psalms 83 says. It says, keep not thou, O silence, O Yahweh Shem Shai, hold not thy peace and be not still, O Yahweh Shem Shai. This is the patience of the saints. This is David. Well, it's like this is This is a psalm of Asaph, but this is in the scriptures as for lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. They have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. Who? The tabernacles of Edom, the Ishmaelites, Moab, and the Hagarenes, Gebal, Ammon, Amalek, the Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre. Asher is also joined with them. They have opened the children of Lot. Do unto them as unto the Midianites, as to Sisera, as to Jabin, at the brook of Kison. Okay, all these nations have had a hand in taking us down, man, and because of that, there has to be a recompense. Wouldn't that be fair? If somebody kidnapped your family member, wouldn't you want that person to go to jail? The answer is yes. Well, that's the very same thing we're saying. We were kidnapped as a people, so-called blacks, so-called natives, so-called Hispanics were kidnapped as a people, and we want justice. And what is justice? The scripture goes into that: an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Okay, and what does Yahweh Shai said? I've not come to do away with the law, but to fulfill the law. Well, that's part of the law. He that goeth into captivity must be taken into captivity. That's what Yahweh Shai is coming to do. Going back to the point, this is Jeremiah 15:7 says, all that found them have devoured them. And their adversaries said, we have fed not, because they have sinned against Yahweh Shem Shai, the habitation of justice, even Yahweh Shem Shai, the hope of their fathers. So these other people know who we were. And that's another sin, because when you go into Revelations, the 11th chapter, but before I continue on, the point is that every nation has had a hand in taking us down, man. But another sin is that they let me see. This is Revelation 11:9. It says, and they of the people and of kindreds, which we just read about, right, the tabernacles of Edom, Ishmael, Moab, and tongues and nations shall see their dead bodies 3 days and a half, and shall not suffer their dead bodies to be put in graves. Which the understanding to this is that all these other nations knew that we were the Hebrew Israelites for 350 years and didn't tell us who we were. That's when you're going to trial, they have this thing called a discovery. By law, the prosecutor has to give you all the information that they have on you so that you can properly defend yourself. If they don't, that's illegal. These people never gave us our discovery. These people never told us who we were. And that's a sin, man. Right? They had us calling ourselves black, white, brown, whatever. That's a sin, man. And so the only thing that we're merely saying is what the scriptures say. Okay, let's get uh let's close up with Sirach 10 and verse 8. It says, because of unrighteous dealings, injuries, and riches got by deceit, the kingdom is translated from one people to another. And when you go into Daniel 2, when you go into Daniel 7, it gives you the kingdoms in order. All right, we are at that last kingdom, and because of all these riches gotten by the sea, by the stealing of the land, the stealing of the heritage, the creation of unrighteous decrees, because of that, now they have to go into captivity, and now the kingdom is being translated. This is Second Ezra 6 and 9. For Esau, the so-called white man, is the end of the world, and Jacob, so-called blacks and Hispanics, is the beginning of it that follows, man. There is no hope for these other heathen nations. They've already had their go at the wheel. Now it's time for the true kings and priests to reign underneath Yahweh Shai, Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai. That's justice. So yeah, it's a harsh statement to hear, but so is a guilty sentence to anyone who's committed a crime. Do you think that even a confessed murderer, you know, is happy when he hears the judgment that he's being sentenced to? Absolutely not. It's still it's a harsh statement, but it's still justice. It's a harsh statement that these nations are going into captivity, but it's still justice. I hope this has been edifying. Until the next one, shalom.